how do the cars get there? Like, it's a car society, cool, I get that, but how do you know what I'm asking? Cars just drops us into this mirror universe that's weirdly similar to ours, but it doesn't explain at all how they got to that point. And New York Magazine, for some reason, points out that there is a car Jesus, so how did we get here? Do they order them like in the movie Robots? Do they just kind of show up? Is it a Rocket League situation? What goes down? I know they have pipes, but can they pipe? That's coming out of the video. So to figure this out, the first thing we need to understand is that this is made for kids, obviously, so there's no solid proof ever of how babies are born. There's no car sex, there's no car pregnancy. We don't even really understand what a childhood looks like for a car. There's no flashback, there's no talk about, these characters as kids. That being said, there is some proof of procreation. The first is just that there are gender differences. We see this in like the intro montage in the first one with the women's bathroom being super long, the men's bathroom being super short. We don't know exactly what separates car men and car women. It might just be a social thing, but at the very least, this world is set up for mechanical men and mechanical women, let's say. The next is that cars do die, and if cars die, other cars have to be born, obviously. And to kind of go along with that, cars have evolved. This is from the 2022 animated short series on Disney Plus, Cars on the Road. In the first episode, we see dinosaurs.
She's a beauty. Get a load of those teeth.
So we know that cars have evolved in some way similar to humans. There was a car dinosaur, probably a car ice age, and out of that came car Neanderthals. You get it. So the first big thing in this investigation is that there isn't any aging. And don't get me wrong, cars do die. That's made very clear by Doc. He's in the third movie, but only as a memory for McQueen and the other characters. It's very obvious that he has passed on. So what happened? Because he didn't get physically older or, beat down or anything. I think it's just a mechanical thing. The internal wiring just eventually stops. And we do kind of know that stuff like that exists because in the third movie, we meet Cruz Ramirez, whose job is to train racers. Obviously, like a mechanical health is a thing here. But outside of that, physically, there's no change ever. So is there kids in this universe? The first thing that everyone points to is Mia and Tia. We'll get into that later in a section I like to call Is Lightning McQueen a Pedophile? But outside of that, does McQueen himself have any sort of family lineage? Kinda. It's hard to tell. Google's AI helped as much as they could. Lightning McQueen's girlfriend is Sally, and Mater is his cousin's sister, so they got pretty close there, but not quite. Despite that, he does kind of have a long family lineage. The issue with this, and that I need to talk about before moving forward, is it's really hard to take the fandom at its word. So this fandom website is a wiki. There's no way to know where this information is coming from. You have to have an account to post or anything, but anyone can really edit this whenever they want. So is there somewhere in the lore that I'm missing that McQueen's family tree is explained? Or is this just kind of all for fun? And it's fine if it is all for fun. The fandom I'm going to use a lot because there's so much information, but you do kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. There's no real evidence of McQueen having a family anywhere in the films. So despite people saying that he has mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and cousins, you just can't really prove that. So throughout the entire trilogy of 2 racing movies and 1 anti-terrorism movie, there's only one proof of a child, and that's Maddie McGear. So Maddie McGear is just a fan of Cruz Ramirez and Lightning McQueen. In the third movie, we see her at a bunch of races with who you can assume to be her mom, but it's never really said that. The only way she is actually confirmed to be a child is in a Coppertone sunscreen commercial.
Mom! Honey, you need sun protection if you want to be a champion like Lightning McQueen.
No, I need it!
Help protect your future champions with Coppertone Kids.
So what about Mia and Tia? We have Maddie McGear, but we don't see her until the third movie, and she's just not that important. We see right away, pretty much in the first one, two seemingly young twin fans that love McQueen. Just to read a little bit about them. Mia and Tia are supporting characters in Cars and Cars Toons and minor characters in Cars 2. They are red to match Lightning McQueen, 1992 Mazda Miatas. They are Lightning McQueen's biggest fans. Miata, Mia and Tia, Miata, very clever. Unlike some of the other cars in this universe, Mia and Tia are actually based off of a real car that exists, a 92 Miata. This movie came out in 2006. That would make them... So, to be clear, McQueen never does anything explicitly gross towards these fans, but there are some moments, I think, that are worth looking into.
I'm Mia. I'm Tia. We're like your biggest fans. Good job.
I love being me.
So this is a bit concerning, right? If the model of the car equals the age of the car, these girls are very young, and it makes sense for them to be fans of a rookie racer, but his interactions towards them are a bit inappropriate. He wants to give them cool new raps, he wants to bring them to the red carpet and the after parties, and he seems to enjoy it when they flash their headlights at him.
I love being me.
And as much as I'd like to say that, McQueen wouldn't do those things, celebrities being creeps is pretty common. So at the very least, let's figure out how old he is. Yeah. So Mia and Tia are cougars in this situation, I guess. It doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal when they flash their headlights at him, whereas, if two minors just did that, might be a bit more concerning. Headlights are also just usually uncovered in this universe, so maybe I'm reading too much into that. Maybe it was just a bad, adult joke. There's actually a lot of those in this movie.
Race cars don't need headlights because the track is always lit.
Yeah, well, so's my brother, but he still needs headlights.
Hey, have you seen the sheriff? Oh my gosh.
Hey, what are you doing? Get a good peek, city boy?
So is Lightning McQueen 0 years old? I don't think so. He's an original creation. He's not based off an actual car model, which means we think he's made in 2006 because the movie came out in 2006. But really all that means is that he has an untraceable origin. But there are more examples of cars that are actually based off of real life cars. A great example being Sally, Lightning McQueen's actual love interest in the movie. What is she? She is an '02 Porsche 911. That would make her 4 years old at the time of the first movie. Concerning behavior from McQueen, to say the least. So how does this work? Because she can't be more than 4 years old because that's when the car came out. And it's not like this car universe is set in the future because she's obviously a modern car. It's not like she's a classic. She's definitely a new make. So it's fair to say that this took place in 2006. And there are classic cars like Doc in the first one, but he's a 51 Hornet, which makes sense timeline-wise for Sally to literally be 4 years old or younger. But clearly, she's mature, obviously. So what's exactly going on with the whole aging thing here? Are Mia and Tia 14 years old? Maybe, but I think it's more likely that they're probably just small. Is Lightning McQueen a pedophile? Again, maybe, but it doesn't seem like it. Is Sally 4 years old? No. So believe it or not, Sally is the linchpin for this entire investigation because if you rewatched Cars at 3 a.m. on a Monday like I did, you would know she's an attorney. How is it possible for someone to be 4 years old and an attorney? College is 4 years long. She already had an established career by then. None of it makes sense. We know she couldn't have existed before 2002. The movie came out in 2006. What the hell is going on? What we have here is a 4-year-old car. Mechanically speaking, she's 4 years old. It's a 2002 model. She has to be 4 years old. But she has intellect somewhere in the 20s. She had to have been born with the knowledge to be an attorney. She had to be made, however cars are made, with that ability. The soul inside of this 4-year-old body is much older. So cars don't age. There's never an example of a car like physically actually aging, but we know that they can die, which means that cars have to be being born somehow. And on top of that, they seem to just have an innate age that they are mentally, regardless of their age physically. What the hell is going on? We don't really know why babies come into existence. Like, biologically, we've got it pretty figured out, but spiritually, there's still a lot of questions. You can kind of determine what your baby looks like based on who you mate with, but even then, it's kind of just a dice roll. Some people believe it's just nature. We have babies and the baby just comes out how the baby comes out. Other people believe that there's a divine intervention, that a god or gods gives you whatever baby is perfect for you and your partner. But one thing we do know is that we really don't know where the soul comes from, and I believe there's something very similar in the Cars universe. I believe in the mechanic. The only possible explanation about how cars come into existence, given everything we know about the Cars cinematic universe, is the mechanic, and here's how it works. They create the car based on the schematics of the parents. They give an assigned intellect and level of knowledge to each car, and they also give an assigned or prescribed role to those cars. This is what I'm talking about with schematics. We have Maddie McGear with her mom, obviously very, very similar. Up top is Coriander Widetrack. It doesn't matter. She's not a confirmed kid, but obviously probably a kid. And you can see with her parents, she's very similar to them, especially to mom in the red there. Intellect. Sally is not 4 years old mentally. She can't be. So the only way that this makes sense is if her soul came into being with the knowledge that she already needed to be an attorney. And I mean, as far as roles go, this guy wants to tow stuff, this guy wants to haul stuff, this guy wants to get high as shit. They always just want to do exactly what their vehicle type is meant to do. What we're kind of seeing is that cars come as they are. I think the reason that Maddie McGear and some of the other childlike characters that we see are children is because they will always be children. There was not a baby McQueen or a baby Mater, despite what anyone's going to tell you. They've always had their level of knowledge. So what does that mean for Mia and Tia? We know that the car model is 14 years old. We know that they're pretty small. We know that they have, younger voices. Does that mean that they're 14 years old? Mentally, though, it doesn't really. It's hard to know, if they're above the age of consent or car scent, if you will. They could be young in like a 23-year-old kind of way. They could be young in a 19-year-old kind of way. Or they could be young in a 14-year-old kind of way. We really just don't know. The only real objection that someone could have to the mechanic that you might be having right now is, what about upgrading new bodies? We know they can get new wheels. We know they can get like decals and wraps and stuff. What if Lightning McQueen was a baby and then, kind of like a sim, he went from being a baby to a teenager all in one because they moved his soul or whatever into a new car body? That just doesn't really make sense with what we've seen on screen. One of the biggest examples is just with the flashback to Radiator Springs. We see all of these characters, even 40 years before the movie starts, look exactly the same. The exception being Mater, because he kind of let himself go, but that's his choice. These characters don't get new bodies ever. They are what they are throughout the entire cycle. The next is McQueen in Cars 3. I wouldn't blame you if you haven't seen it. Basically, cars are getting faster, new technology's coming out, new cars are just better than McQueen. He hates that, he can't stand it. The topic of just get a new body, just get a new upgrade. Obviously, maybe he wouldn't go for that, but it's never even mentioned. It's not an option. These cars that are fast and good train consistently with Cruz Ramirez to be fast and good. They don't just go get an engine upgrade. It doesn't work like that. And the last one, I don't think this is going to be much of a surprise, is the eyes. There's something weirdly humanizing about the eyes and the fact that they fit the entire windshield for these cars. There's been so many theories about how this kind of works, and it ends in the homunculus theory. That's one of the grossest things I've ever seen in my entire life. I'm sorry.
I'm AI with the braids. I'm AI with the braids.
The idea that the souls of these vehicles can operate outside of what the vehicle is just doesn't make sense at all. And if it existed, we'd see an example of that. But what we know is when Doc died, when he mechanically broke down or whatever happened, when Doc was no longer here, he's a famous racer, or he was a famous racer. He had the opportunity to go into a younger body or whatever, right? We don't ever see that. It just doesn't make sense. It's only fair to say that these cars exist within a certain car body, and that is their car body. That's that. So who is the mechanic? Who is this mysterious entity? I have no clue. You have no clue. They have no clue. We know that they have divinity. There's a car pope. So there is, in the Cars universe, some push to like get closer to the divine, make sense of where we come from and where we belong. One thing that we can say is that this is a much more fatalistic society than the one that we live in. Fatalism is something that people believe, essentially, that all of our actions and outcomes are determined from the start by a god or gods or anything like that. This one makes it a bit more concrete, because if you're born as a fire truck, you know, there's only so much that you can do as a fire truck. That's kind of predetermined for you. And there's dinosaurs, so at the very least, we could argue that the mechanic is everlasting, or is a group of people or other cars passing on the power to create, or the template to create cars, you know, throughout the generations, because something has been keeping them going for a long, long time. So can the cars in Cars make more cars? No. But despite that, they've continued to exist for generations. They have different sizes, different personality types, different maturity levels. It's just like the real world, just like our world. So where do they come from? Whether you believe it's a divine force, a secret organization, or just some kid with toys, just like in the real world, the choice is up to you.